So in comes President Trump. President Trump might be the key for Americans getting another stimulus check. So, can he actually help Americans? Can President Trump actually help get Americans another stimulus check? Well, let's talk about that. Everyone knows that President Trump was super excited about one thing and one thing alone. Can you guess what it was? It was the payroll tax cut, right? Um, Now, he was very enthusiastic about that. He was very excited about that. He pushed for that. That's not really what we're seeing him push for anymore. He has long ago kind of stopped the push for that. Um, but while he was very and super enthusiastic about that, we have started to see a certain level of enthusiasm, not to the same extent of what we saw with the payroll tax cut, but we have started to see a certain level of enthusiasm um, from him regarding stimulus checks, primarily because he actually understands that politically, which is the name of the game here, right? This is politics. Politically, regular people, they actually need help, and they need help in the form of a new stimulus deal. That regular people can't be left out of a new stimulus deal like what we saw proposed with the skinny bill, the skinny emaciated bill from the Senate. So with him understanding that, or you might even say despite him understanding that, there are a few things that are working against the president. Um, we've seen, if you it's a little bit harder to kind of pay attention to the numbers and kind of track the numbers because, one, we don't really see them reported every day as they once were, in terms of, like, the breaking news and stuff like that. You don't the COVID-19 is not getting the same level of attention, right? And despite the fact that most people might not be paying attention for whatever reason, or might not be as aware, what we are seeing is we're seeing a spike in COVID-19 cases, specifically in states that were very quick to reopen business. And as a result of that, we're starting to see the return of restrictions with businesses, where you have, like, either certain types of businesses that have to close, or we're seeing a further reduction in capacity, or we're seeing restriction in hours of operations. In whatever form, we're starting to see, specifically in cases where those spikes are starting to go up again, we're seeing a new set of restrictions, and in some cases we're seeing some stay-at-home orders. And quite frankly, it's expected, as we move further into our recent crossover into fall and we head closer to winter, and we actually get to winter, more and more places, more business restrictions and stay-at-home orders is going to be the norm. We've also seen a recent kind of damp, hold on the on this tout of the economy doing better. If you think back to probably around June, that was where, when the June jobs report came out, that was where we started to hear, oh, the economy is recovering, things are so great, oh my god, oh my god, oh my gosh, like, this is the best economy ever, like, we have more jobs than ever before, and people are out buying gold and just dancing on the golden streets, right? Like, they were just hoobahing it up, right? When we got that June jobs report. So we got the June jobs report. June looked, well, when we got that looked pretty good. The July jobs report looked pretty decent. But things are starting to shift down again, right? We're not that level of of greatness regarding our economy that people were talking about is not as evident. Not saying that we don't have aspects of the economy that are doing okay for the most part. We have more aspects of our economy that are not doing as well than aspects of the economy that are doing well. Or if they're doing a little bit better than they were before, the trend of them is things are starting to kind of trend in a downward direction. So that's going against the president. And then, speaking of downward direction, when you look at some of the polls, there is quite an indication that it is less likely, or excuse me, it's more likely than not that the president is not going to be reelected. And so all of those things, among other things that I really didn't care to talk about, pretty much these things are contributing to the idea that not just the president, but overall his various members of his administration, the idea that, hey, we actually need to appeal to individuals and we need to actually help them and give them economic relief in the form of a stimulus check. Uh, Now, who is to say? I mean, you could hypothesize that if many of these things, or even one of the previous things that I had mentioned, were not the case, that we most likely wouldn't be getting talks of stimulus. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? So, I want to make it clear that President Trump, guys, he is not the problem. I mentioned that earlier. Stimulus checks were not the problem. We're not at this place of an impasse with stimulus talks because of stimulus checks being the problem, despite the fact that people, namely congressional Republicans, don't want to provide stimulus checks. But President Trump, if you want to blame President Trump for as the reason we're not seeing progress, as I've seen, not a lot, but I've seen some people, they're, oh my gosh, it's President Trump's fault. Da, da, da. If you were to fall into that camp, you would be sorely mistaken, because as it relates to Republicans, he's really the main and prominent Republican who is actually pushing to really provide stimulus checks to people. He actually went so far as to recently suggest that Congress should authorize him to take some of the unused, I mentioned how we didn't use all of the money from the CARES Act, that Congress should authorize him to use the remaining funds to just cut out checks to American people. He did that around a little bit after the executive order came out that issued that $300 for federal economic benefit, or excuse me, stimulus from FEMA. It was not too long after that we got that suggestion. So, and even excuse me, even relatively more recent than that, when you look at, if you remember, the bipartisan proposal that came from the House Problem Solvers Caucus that looked to spend $1.5 trillion over a fairly short period of time, that included stimulus checks with the same provisions as the CARES Act. Donald Trump, excuse me, our president, actually supported that as well. So, again, in the word of the day here, let's be fair. President Trump is not the holdup when it comes to us getting a stimulus package. So if any Democrats say that, they are lying. President Trump is not hurting. He's not holding that up. At least if you look at the surface level. We don't know what's kind of going on very deeply behind the scenes, but just from what we see, the appearance is not that Donald Trump is the reason we are not seeing a stimulus package. So President Trump is actually in the position where he's looking to help Americans get a stimulus check.